1 hour after midnight, a wall of water, 10 kilometres wide, erased 170,000 people from the map. The dam that failed was called the Iron Dam. It was supposed to be unbreakable. What happened in Henan province that night is still the deadliest structural failure in human history, and you've probably never heard its name. August 1975, Central China. Typhoon Nina had already crossed Taiwan, killing 25 people before it reached the mainland. It was supposed to die over the continent. Typhoons always did. But Nina hit a cold front and stopped moving. For 3 days, it sat over Henan like a faucet nobody could close. In 24 hours, more than 1,000 millimetres of rain fell. That is more than the entire annual rainfall in a single day. Witnesses said birds were being beaten out of the sky by the force of the water. Below the clouds sat 62 dams built across 2 decades of feverish construction. At the top of that cascade stood Banqiao, the largest, the strongest, the pride of the system. Built in 1952, reinforced with Soviet steel, nicknamed, without irony, the Iron Dam. And one man had spent 15 years warning it was going to kill everyone.
His name was Chen Xing, chief hydrologist. He had designed the thing himself. He wanted 12 sluice gates on Banqiao. They gave him 5. He warned the whole region was overdammed, that one failure would trigger a chain. For saying this out loud, he was labelled a right-wing opportunist and removed from his job. In Mao's China, retaining water was revolutionary. Doubt was not. On August 5th, the rain began and did not stop. Within hours, small reservoirs upstream were already at capacity. Operators watched their gauges climb past every line ever drawn on them. Local officials drove through the storm to beg for permission to open Banqiao's gates. Permission was refused. Downstream towns were already flooding. More water would drown them.
So the gates stayed mostly shut. By August 7th, authorities finally reversed the order. Open everything. But the telegram carrying that decision never arrived. The wires had been cut. Even when crews pried the gates open themselves, it was too late. Years of silt had built up against the upstream face. The 5 gates could only drain a fraction of what was coming in. 12 gates recommended, 5 installed, partially blocked. Against a storm twice the size of anything the dam had been designed to survive. This is the reframe. The flood was natural. The death toll was political. Inside the dam, men stacked sandbags along the crest by flashlight. Water rose 1 centimetre every few minutes. Rain came sideways across their faces. Evacuation notices finally went out to the towns below the dam. In Swiping County, across the river, the notice never came. 36,000 people were sleeping through it. Just before midnight, the sky went quiet. The rain stopped. Stars came out. A man on the dam shouted that the water was falling, that they had made it.
It was not falling. The reservoir had simply overtopped the dam and was pouring straight over the crest. What he saw was the beginning of the end. At 1 in the morning on August 8th, Banqiao gave way. The initial breach was 300 metres wide. 600 million cubic metres of water left the reservoir in 6 hours. Survivors said it sounded like the sky was collapsing. Someone on the dam screamed one phrase before the concrete went. "The river dragon has come." The wave was 10 kilometres wide, 7 metres high, moving at 50 kilometres per hour across perfectly flat farmland. It was not a flood. It was a moving wall. A commune called Dao Wencheng was erased completely. Every one of its 9,600 residents died. At a primary school of 300 children, only 3 survived. Banqiao was only the first domino. The wave slammed into Shimantan downstream and tore it open. Then the next dam. Then the next. 62 dams failed that night, in the exact cascade Chen Xing had warned about 15 years earlier. The Chinese Air Force began dropping food from planes. According to Human Rights Watch, more than half the airdropped supplies landed in the water, not on dry ground.
The floodwater did not drain for 2 weeks. It sat over the plain, 12,000 square kilometres of standing water, now filled with rotting bodies and raw sewage. Then came the second wave, not water, but disease. Dysentery, typhoid, infection of untreated wounds. 11 million people with no clean water, no shelter, and midsummer heat. The official Chinese death toll for decades was 26,000. That counts only the first night. It does not count the famine. It does not count the disease. 8 senior members of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Parliament, men with access to classified files, estimated the true figure at 230,000. Discovery Channel later put the number at 240,000. Some estimates reach as high as 1 million. For comparison, Chernobyl has a directly attributable death toll in the dozens. Even the broadest long-term estimates land around 4,000. In 2005, Discovery ranked Banqiao the greatest technological disaster of all time, above Chernobyl. By every measure, it was not close.
And yet, for 30 years, it did not officially exist. The entire event was classified as a state secret in China until 2005. Foreign journalists were kept away. Domestic media were ordered silent. The phrase Banqiao incident did not appear in a Chinese newspaper for over a decade. The dam was rebuilt. It has more gates now, better monitoring, warning systems independent of phone lines. Every lesson was learned, except the one Chen Xing had actually been trying to teach. China today operates roughly 87,000 reservoirs. Most were built during the same period as Banqiao, under the same assumptions. Government assessments have repeatedly flagged that many sit in poor condition. The calculation that killed Banqiao, the idea that you can define a 1,000-year storm and treat anything beyond it as impossible, is still how almost every dam on Earth is designed. Climate models now project rainfall events that exceed what engineers called worst case in 1975. The 1,000-year storm is no longer a 1,000-year storm. In Libya, in 2023, 2 dams failed above the city of Derna during a single storm. Over 11,000 people died in one night. The warnings had been on paper for years. The pattern repeats because the political pressure that built Banqiao still exists everywhere. Build fast, build big, underestimate the storm, overrule the engineer, classify the aftermath. 50 years later, in the village of Daowanqing, the ground where 9,600 people lived is now a wheat field. There is no monument on that specific ground, no list of names. The commune simply no longer exists on any map. Chen Xing died in 2009. He spent his last decades pushing for dam safety reform. Most of his recommendations were quietly adopted. Almost none of his warnings about the next Banqiao were. The Iron Dam was supposed to be unbreakable. What actually broke that night was the idea that nature will stay inside the lines we drew for it. The rain came. The math was wrong. The man who said so was fired. And the people downstream were sleeping.